Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe on this Friday. In today's episode, going to be speaking about Hakim Ziyech, Kepa Arrizabalaga and the race to sign Erling Haaland from Borussia Dortmund this summer. But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. Also a massive thank you for helping the channel get to 20k subs. I spoke about this on my review last night for Barnsley, but wanted to say it again because it really does mean the world to me. So thank you to the old subs, to the new subs. It really means the world to me that you are following the content, engaging with it, commenting on it, liking it, sharing it. Thank you so much. So moving on now in terms of speaking about Chelsea and of course last night's game against Barnsley, a very forgettable win in truth and a performance that wasn't that impressive. But listen, if we're lifting the FA Cup trophy in May at Wembley, none of us will be complaining about that result or performance last night. Of course, happy about the result. You can't complain when Chelsea are winning games consistently, and that's what we're doing at the moment under Thomas Tuchel. But wanted to focus on one or two players from that performance and in terms of recent stories about them and speculation about them. Firstly, Hakim Ziyech, who was quite disappointing last night. At least I was quite underwhelmed by his performance, and there's been a lot of talk around Hakim Ziyech recently. I know a lot of you guys in the comments on my videos have been asking questions about him, my thoughts about his lack of game time recently under Thomas Tuchel since he arrived recently, and also where does sort of Hakim Ziyech fit in Tuchel's system as sort of that right winger that he was for Frank Lampard in his system. You know, the connection he formed with Reece James. Where does he fit now? His injury issues, his game time. We're going to get into all of that, but he did this interview recently where he was quite revealing in terms of Lampard sacking, in terms of Tuchel arriving, how he struggled to adapt to Premier League football. So I want to go into his quotes and also a great piece by Simon Johnson in The Athletic about Ziyech, and then I'll give you my thoughts on Ziyech recently at Chelsea. So this is what he had to say to Zigo Sport. It has been a difficult first 6 months for me at Chelsea. I began with an injury, came back and then got injured again. Things have not gone as I had planned. The pace of the game over here is much quicker than it was in Ajax. I picked that up straight away and then I got injured in my first training game. That sets you back completely and then it happens again. It was bloody annoying. I'm used to having my friends and my mum around me. Being without them has taken some getting used to, and of course the lockdown has made matters worse. On top of that, I've had to learn how to drive on the other side of the road. I've not had any accidents, but it was very difficult at the start. You know what can happen if results aren't good enough. It's not the first time I've seen a manager sacked. We'll have to see what type of system Tuchel favours. I don't mind whether I play on the right wing or the middle, just as long as I play. That for me is the main thing. I always have faith in myself. I know what I can do and I won't put pressure on myself. The best Hakim Ziyech is yet to come. So very strong words by Ziyech at the end there, and hopefully we see the real Ziyech very soon. I think firstly that point of adapting to a new country and a new culture, I think is something as fans we don't really appreciate enough. I think sometimes we assume players, a bit like in Football Manager or especially FIFA career mode, you know, you just buy them from a foreign league and they'll just come in instantly, and because they're a quality player they're just going to adapt instantly. And I think it's a little bit different between say Kai Havertz struggles and Hakim Ziyech, mostly the difference in age, but there still is an adaptation there, and obviously Hakim Ziyech with his injuries too, which I think has been probably the worst thing. The stop and start nature of his season for Chelsea this year has really hurt him, because between October and November he was really finding form. I think people have forgotten how good Ziyech was in that period, how he became the creative hub of Chelsea. I mean, I love watching Ziyech play. Even there were some moments last night I was quite disappointed in his performance, as I explained in my Barnsley review, but I think there were many moments last night, little tricks and flicks and little moments where you just see the quality and guile of this player. He reminds me a lot of Cesc Fabregas when he arrived at the club, and that's high praise because Cesc, in terms of like my top 10 players to ever play for Chelsea, he's in that list. So Hakim Ziyech absolutely was proving himself to be a great signing earlier in the season, and I felt this piece from Simon Johnson in The Athletic about his performance last night and his recent struggles sort of gave wider context to Ziyech at the moment at Chelsea. Ziyech struggling, but abilities evident in training. Now he must convince Tuchel. A great piece. Definitely suggest you go and read this, link in the description box below. But Simon Johnson goes into sort of the lack of luck that Ziyech has had on the pitch for Chelsea so far, and sort of the lack of time he's actually had on the pitch playing football recently. As he goes into here, a knee injury against Brighton in Chelsea's only pre-season game ruled him out for 5 weeks, just as he was beginning to build a rhythm and show his class after a debut off the bench on October the 17th. He picked up a hamstring injury against Leeds just over 2 months later. That meant another 4 weeks on the sidelines. He's also only completed the full 90 minutes on only 2 occasions so far this season. Chelsea's 4-1 victory over Sheffield United at home on November the 7th, where he set up 2 of the goals, and Morocco's 2-0 defeat of Central African Republic 10 days later in the Africa Cup of Nations qualifying, where he scored 1 and made the other. No wonder he doesn't seem up to speed at the moment. So I think it's about a little bit of patience. You know, silly me asking for patience at Chelsea Football Club, but I think the quality is absolutely there. I think in terms of asking where does he fit in this system, I think it's pretty obvious. He's going to play as one of those roaming number 10s, you know, behind the striker, whether that's in a 4-back or a 3-back system. I think that's where he's going to play. And I think that actually works for his game. You know, he's not a touchline hugging winger. And one of the things we said back in the summer when we were signing the likes of Kai Havertz, Hakim Ziyech and Timo Werner was their versatility, was the ability to play in different systems and different roles. So I feel that that's something that is going to be a strength of Ziyech. And I think his natural quality and creativity, I think is too good to fail. I think we have a player in the prime of their career, a bit like Kai Havertz. You know, I think Kai, the issue with him at the moment is he's still very young. He's still finding himself as a footballer. I think it's different for Ziyech, who's in the prime of his career. And if he starts performing the way he was earlier in the year, where he's creating chances regularly, you know, teams are struggling to keep him down. I mean, that performance against Sheffield United on November, if you want to see the quality of Hakim Ziyech, go back and watch that game, because he had a hand in nearly all the goals. You know, I've obviously created 2 goals that night, but the first goal, I think, for Tammy Abraham, his pass over to Mateo Kovacic, basically unlocked the Sheffield United defence there for Chelsea to score the equaliser. So Ziyech's influence is incredible, really, when he gets going, and I think he'll find his place in Tuchel's team. It's just about him getting back to those fitness levels he had earlier in the season, getting a run of games, which is what any player needs, and Chelsea are playing a lot of football, so I expect him to find minutes in this team regularly under Tuchel. So let me know your opinions on Ziyech, because this is an extremely talented player, and I think it'd be really naive and silly for any of us to write this player off. I think it happens too often, especially of younger players, but especially a player that only a couple months ago was showing great quality in a Chelsea shirt. Let me know your opinions on Ziyech, his future under Tuchel, in the comments below. I also want to speak about Kepa Arrizabalaga a little bit. Had a positive night against Barnsley in the FA Cup, keeping a clean sheet, made a key save early on for Chelsea, and looked much better at corners, even though I still don't trust him week in, week out over Edouard Mendy at the moment. But hopefully that will give him some confidence in what has been a very difficult period for him at Chelsea. But this report here by Matt Law speaks about potentially another chance for Kepa Arrizabalaga. Matt Law says there is a sense Chelsea would like Kepa Arrizabalaga to be given a second chance before having to make a final decision on his future. Marina Granovskaya spoke to Kepa in the summer in an effort to offer support and try to plot a path forward. So for me, I still think it's a point of no return for Kepa, at least to be the first choice goalkeeper. I think at this point there's too much that's happened. I think he's just simply not good enough. I think there's too much there that's happened at this point, and I think mentally maybe for him it's just best that he cuts ties with Chelsea sooner rather than later, maybe goes back to Spain, maybe back to Bilbao, and restarts his career. He's still a very young player, so could find himself back in La Liga, be confident once again, and create a good career for himself. I actually wish that for him. You know, I hate to see that, you know, reports he's feeling isolated at Chelsea, and, you know, it's clearly suffered at Chelsea recently. But in terms of the first team, I still want Edouard Mendy in goal. You know, in terms of the amount of clean sheets we've had this season, there's been an improvement there. I'm not saying Edouard Mendy's been perfect all the time, but it's massively different to last season, where Kepa undeniably, historically, was one of the worst keepers in Premier League history. I mean, the stats just say that, and I don't think you can get around that. I've seen some quite ridiculous reports recently around Lampard and Kepa in terms of trying to sort of redo or rewrite history in terms of what actually happened, in terms of Lampard being to blame for not really backing Kepa. Now, once again, I don't want to annoy you guys by speaking about the past. We know, obviously, it's Tuchel now, and Tuchel's given him a clean slate. But just in my personal opinion, I think he's just not a good enough keeper to really assert himself at Chelsea. And as well, whenever you see teams get corners with Kepa in goal, they're going to try and swing it in on top of him to try and expose his frailties at set pieces and sort of that physical dominance that Edouard Mendy clearly has over Kepa. I can't see that changing, but hopefully if he can get some minutes for Tuchel, say in the FA Cup, if we continue to progress in that competition, maybe that will increase his fee for the summer, because I do think Chelsea need to cut ties in the summer. But we've seen this, you know, in terms of players, and especially Marina and Chelsea trying to save face with transfers, and given how much we spent on Kepa, even though all the frailties of him, the poor form last season, it seems they still want to give him another chance, which personally for me may cost Tuchel in a big game if he decides to go for Kepa. But let me know your opinions on Kepa. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Kepa could make a comeback to the Premier League starting 11 under Thomas Tuchel? Let me know in the comments below. And lastly, I want to speak about Erling Haaland being linked to Chelsea. The Borussia Dortmund striker continues to be linked with a move to the Premier League, not just from Chelsea, Man City as well in the race to sign him. And Dean Jones from Eurosport here claiming Chelsea intend to challenge Man City for Haaland's signature, but it's worth bearing in mind that some of the player's closest allies have reservations about him moving to the Premier League just yet. So for me, Chelsea versus Man City, it's not that much of a surprise. I mean, I look at Man City, I think about the injury issues of Sergio Aguero, especially his age as well in the Premier League. You feel they're going to need to replace him sooner rather than later. Gabriel Jesus, despite having some good moments, and City at the moment are coping very well without a main striker, and that's the Pep Guardiola style. To be honest, you can't complain about what Man City are doing at the moment in terms of how much they're succeeding without sort of your recognised striker. But it wouldn't surprise me a club of that size going in for a player like Erling Haaland. And it doesn't surprise me now Chelsea trying to sign a main striker. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of Chelsea recently, even with winning under Thomas Tuchel, of our lack of clinical edge in front of goal. And that is something that you hope maybe Tuchel can bring to Chelsea, still with the talent there. And maybe he could find that in time with his team and trying to figure out a way to score more goals. But we are struggling in front of goal, absolutely, to finish teams off. I think this team can be a lot more clinical. Even recently, we're struggling to create clear-cut opportunities. And I look at a lot of the players currently, Timo Werner, even Tammy Abraham, who I feel has had a decent season for Chelsea, but there still are doubts about him being the big striker in the long term at Chelsea. And Erling Haaland is no surprise to me in terms of Chelsea, looking at his goal record, looking at the fact that we want to sign a massive player in the summer once again and wanting to get back to the top of the Premier League. Don't be surprised if Chelsea are seriously interested and trying to sign Erling Haaland in the summer. I think there are a lot of varying factors here. I read a report recently by Raphael Honigstein, German football expert for The Athletic, speaking about Borussia Dortmund's struggles, and a bit like Chelsea struggling to get into the top four to qualify for next season's Champions League. And it's been reported elsewhere that if Borussia Dortmund fail to qualify for the Champions League this season in the Bundesliga, they may be forced to sell some of their biggest assets like Jadon Sancho and Erling Haaland. Chelsea are not messing around anymore. I think there's real clarity about what the club actually are demanding from their head coach now. They want to win the Premier League title pretty much as soon as possible, probably next season, or compete for it seriously for the first time since 2017. Whether it is the case Chelsea could convince Erling Haaland to join Chelsea in the summer, and whether Man City would be in for him seriously as well, we have to wait and see. But in terms of that clinical edge, Chelsea, if we want to get back to the top of the Premier League, you need a striker who's going to guarantee you goals week in, week out, a bit like what we had with Diego Costa, and we've still struggled to replace that since 2017. So let me know your opinions on this rumour. Do you think it could happen? Do you think Chelsea will be battling City in the summer for Erling Haaland? Let me know in the comments below. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this episode of Let's Talk Chelsea. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again